Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to this channel. In this video, I'm going to be going through my Shadowdark Dolmenwood Bestiary, or Dolmenwood Bestiary for Shadowdark, whatever it is. Really, I'm going to be talking about how I developed it rather than going through and actually, just showing you guys each of the entries. First of all, the book is 78 pages. It's 34,000 words. It took me a while to put it together, but it wasn't hard to do. And this is why I wanted to make a video, because I mentioned that I had this document and people were like, ooh, can I have it? And first of all, no, I don't think I'm going to put it out there for people to download, because it's essentially just the monster manual from Dolmenwood transferred over to Shadowdark, and that's not my work, right? I mean, the Shadowdark stat blocks are from the Shadowdark book, the Dolmenwood monsters are all from Dolmenwood, so that's other people's work. I don't feel like I should just put that out there for people to download for free. But I think the conversion, if you have the books, is quite easy. It just takes a little bit of time. And so I want to go through that and talk about how I did the conversion and point out just to you how easy it is. Because a lot of the time, you don't actually have to do anything except copy-paste. Now, sometimes you do have to do a little bit more work than that, but there are great tools out there to help you. Okay, so let me go through it. First of all, here I'm going to have the Dolmenwood book, and I'm going to have the Shadowdark book off on the side here. And I'm going to go through it. First of all, the Dolmenwood book has a whole bunch of monsters. Now, my book has a few monsters more than this, because I also included things that were in the Shadowdark book that weren't in the Dolmenwood Monster Manual, but that I felt fit with the world a little bit. And then I also have some other supplements like Letters from the Dark and Unnatural Selection and things like that, where when there was a monster that I felt fit with the Dolmenwood vibe, I included it in my monster manual as well. So my monster manual has more than just whatever's in this book. But it has all of these creatures. It doesn't have any of the adventurers, but it has all of the animals and the bestiary proper. Okay, so let's look at some of these entries first of all. And I want to show you how easy it is to convert. Now, if we go to animals, we'll see that there's an Owlbear in here. This is an easy conversion because Owlbears are in every system. Here we go. Owlbear, right down here. Okay, now if we look at my document, and we'll go down to page 8, I think is where the monster manual, or where the Owlbear is. Oh, there it is. Owlbat, Owlbear. Okay, here we go. So we have the same creature in both books. Now, let's look at some of the distinctions here. Now, the Owlbear in this book is level 6, whereas this one is level 5. Hit points, 30, in this book 22. Level AC is 13, in this book AC 14. Okay, so what do we have there? The Owlbear in Shadowdark is slightly easier to hit, has slightly more hit points. How about its attacks? Well, here we have it as 2 claws, they're +4, they do d8 damage each, and they're plus a bear hug. Plus it has a bite of +4 with 1d8 damage. Whereas in Shadowdark, it just has 2 claws +5, and they do a d10 damage each. But if both claws hit the same target, then they can do the crush, which is an extra die of damage, an extra d10. Whereas in here, it's an extra 2d8. Okay, let's look at the math there. Shadowdark, slightly more likely to hit the Owlbear than in Dolmenwood. The Owlbear in Dolmenwood will die a little faster than the Owlbear in Shadowdark, but those are going to come about to the same thing. If you hit it one more time in 2 or 3 rounds, that's going to do 5 or 6 extra damage. It's probably going to kill it, right? So it's not actually that big of a difference. Having fewer hit points, higher AC, rounds out to about the same. The attacks, okay, +4 instead of +5. Slightly less likely to hit you in Dolmenwood, but it gets an extra attack because it has the bite. So what's the maximum damage it can do in a round? Well, if it does both of its bear hugs and its bite, and it gets max damage on each of those without a crit, you're looking at 24 plus another 16. You're looking at 40 damage in a round, maximum. In Shadowdark, it's a maximum of 30. Okay, without crits. So the creature is hitting a little more often in Dolmenwood. Each individual hit is less damage, and the maximum damage it can do is higher, if it gets all of those damages off. But what's the average? Well, the average, say it hits with all of its attacks in each, the average is going to be around, what is that? Half, that's 9 damage, plus an extra 4, so 13 damage. And the average in Shadowdark, before it gets its double bites, its hug off, 13 damage. And its average in Shadowdark is between 5 and 6, about 11 damage. 13 to 11 damage, that's the average. So you see that the extremes are different, but the averages are about the same. there's not much difference there. The fact that the Owlbear is level 6, okay, well, if you want it to be level 5, what happens? What do you have to do? You just drop the hit points and drop the level. Everything else can stay the same. If you want to make it really, really precise, and you certainly could. All I would have to do is drop the level to level 5, and that means probably the attacks go to +4 instead of +5, and then the hit points drop. And okay, let's see, 30 hit points. It has a +3 to its constitution. And so, say it has about 7, 14, it has about 21 plus, well, yeah, it averages out to about the same, about 30 hit points. So you can leave the hit points the same if you want to do it that way. Because that would be about 14 plus an additional 15, 29 hit points is what it would end up being. 29 hit points. If you wanted to do, oops, if you wanted to do that. Okay. 29. Keeps on changing it. I don't know why it does that. 29. There we go. All right. That's how simple it is. You can see that the Owlbear is basically the same in both books. There's slight differences, but are those differences going to matter to your players? Not really. And again, the Dolmenwood Owlbears don't have to be old school essential Owlbears or Shadowdark Owlbears. And so if there's some sort of blend about the same, as long as they're roughly the same, it's not going to matter very much. Right? It's not going to matter very much because the ultimate outcome of any battle is going to be about the same if the AC is 1 higher and the hit points are slightly lower. If the attacks are 13 damage on average instead of 10 damage on average. Right? So there's really not much difference there. Okay, so that's an easy comparison. And you'll see that, in fact, a lot of the creatures that are in both books are like that, because if you look, I got this Owlbear stat block. Where did I get it? I got it from the Shadowdark book. If we go down to Monsters, Monster Statistics, and we go down to Owls, Owlbear, you'll see that, here it is. I just took the stat block and I copied it over. So the book has basically the same stat block. So when the stat block is present in both books, you can use the Shadowdark one. Just done. You don't need to do any conversion there. If you want to do some conversion, you can. It's easy to do. You just say, okay, well, I'm going to drop the level by 1. That means dropping the attack maybe by 1. That means dropping the hit points a little bit. And if you know the conversion of hit points, right, every hit die is a d8. On average, every 2 hit dice is 7 hit points. So that means if you have a +1 con, you add that twice with 2 hit dice. So if you have a +1 con and you're a level 2 creature with 2 hit dice, that means you're going to have 9 hit points. Right? Does that make sense? It's pretty easy because you're just talking about simple math. And so and most of it's already done for you. So it's just a simple adjustment. If you want the Owlbear to be level 5 instead of a level 6, you can very easily. You just drop it down. If you want it to be level 10, you easily could. Now, if you want to create a stat block entirely, because not all of these things are in this book, what I did was I found either stat blocks that were very close, and I just copied those over. So, for example, instead of using what's a good example? A Bregel Longhorn, I used a Knight, right? Or I used I think I used the, he's a level 5 villain in here. I think I used the, where is he? I'm not going to be able to find him now. Some sort of, maybe Black Knight? Reaver, that's the stat block for Reaver. I knew it was like an R. He's level 6. And so this basic stat block is similar. AC 16, AC 17. Okay, hit points 28, hit points 22. Once again, you can see the attacks are much higher because the Bregel is a level 5 creature, it's level 6, so I just dropped that. But the basic stat block is the same. You can just copy it over and adjust things as you go if you need to. So sometimes you just use a stat block that's pretty close to it. And then when you have a special ability in the Shadowdark book or in the Dolmenwood Bestiary that's there, you just copy that over. So if we go back to my document here, and we go all the way down to Mortal Common Folk, I have my Bregel Longhorn here. Yeah, I just used the Reaver stat block, and I took away his shield. And then I gave some of the details here. He has an attack with a longsword, it's a +4, or horns, or gaze. And so the gaze comes from here. And then I have his entourage and his stat blocks all written out here. So again, it's very easy to transfer over if you have a stat block that's very similar. But what if you don't have a stat block that's similar, or you just want to create it from scratch? Well, for that, I use this, which is Matt Dietrich's Guide to Shadowdark Monster Statistics. This is such a useful thing. Essentially, what you have here, this is a free document, I think it's on itch.io, you can download it for free. It just gives you the average statistics for each level of creature from 0 to 30. This is great. So if you have a level 0 creature, it's on average going to have 11 AC, 1 hit point. It's going to have 1 attack with a +1, and it's going to do 1 damage. Its stat modifiers, the median is going to be -2, its worst is going to be -4, and its best, if it has anything that it's good at, is going to be a +1. And if it has an effect, it's going to be a DC 9. And if you have a level 10 creature, on average, that is going to have 15 AC. It's going to have 48 hit points, 3 attacks, +7, and they're each going to be 2d8 damage on average. If it has stat modifiers, which of course every creature does, the median will be +2, the worst will be a -1, and the best will be a +5. And then if it has an effect, it'll be DC 15. Right, this is such a useful little shorthand for creating your own monsters, because it means you just look at the Shadowdark, you just look at the Dolmenwood creature, and you say, okay, let's go to the Antler Wraith. It's a level 4 creature. Okay, well let's look at the average and see if it stacks up. Okay, well, level 4 creatures in Shadowdark have about 13 AC. What's the AC of the Antler Wraith? 14 AC. Great. 19 hit points. What's the hit points of the Antler Wraith? 18 hit points. Okay, awesome. How about its attacks? Well, it has Clawed Grass +3. It's a D10 and does Life Drain. And what does the Life Drain do? If we look down below, it does D3 points of Constitution damage. All right, well, let's look at the Shadowdark book. Well, it's 2 attacks at +3. It's a D6 each. Okay, well, what does that average out to? Well, guess what? That averages out to about 7 damage. About 6 damage, 6.5 damage. What does a D10 average out to? Well, about 5.5 damage. So it's the same, basically. And then it has an effect, DC 12. Does that make sense for a level 4 creature? DC 12. Yeah, that sort of makes sense. And if you want, you can add in these effects, and they're minor enough that they aren't really going to change the overall, because this is an average. So you say, okay, well, yes, it's a D10 or 2D6, but I'm adding Life Drain just once. It can only do 1 Life Drain instead of 2. Or maybe instead of using 2 attacks at +3, I use 1 attack at +3 and does a D10 plus Life Drain. Okay, great. Because then, again, what's the maximum it could do without a crit? 13, 10, and 3 con damage. What's the most it could do in Shadowdark? 12, plus Life Drain. So again, it's so close. It doesn't matter which one you do. You can pick the one that you prefer. And the average won't change. Not much. Not enough to be significant to your players. Not enough so that you have to rework the whole the whole Dolmenwood book and go, oh no, this problem and that problem and all of those things. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Hope that makes sense. So really, that's what I would suggest. Get the Dolmenwood book, get the monster manual, and then get this guide to Shadowdark monster statistics. And when there is a creature, like the Banshee, which actually I don't think there is a Banshee in Shadowdark, but when there's a creature like the Basilisk, copy the Shadowdark stats over, and if you need to change some things, change them. If it's really different, and most of the time it's not, you can modify level up or down, hit points up or down, attack modifier up or down, the rest can stay the same. And if it's a creature that is like a creature from Shadowdark, you use an Orc stat block, or use a Troll stat block, or use the Giant stat block, or use the Owlbear stat block, or the Bear stat block, right? You can always use one of those fairly easily to convert it. And then when you need to create a monster from scratch, you just go to this Guide to Shadowdark Monster Statistics, write out the stat block using this as a baseline, and you'll see that it almost matches up quite perfectly. And when you need to adjust it, then you adjust it slightly. You can do this for every monster in the Dolmenwood Monster Manual, or you can do it just for the ones you need as you need. But I'm telling you guys, this is so easy. This should not be a hindrance to running Dolmenwood in whatever system you want, especially in Shadowdark, but in any old school system, because when people talk about not being able to convert a book from one to another, I scratch my head, because when you actually look at the stats from old school games, you'll see that the details are basically meaningless. The essentials are the same. They are basically the same systems. They're basically the same math. As long as the basic mechanic of D20 plus modifier is there, most of these systems are close enough that you don't even really have to adjust them. I could run Shadowdark just using the Dolmenwood monster manual. All I would have to change is occasionally a save versus doom or a save versus traps or something like that, and adjust that to a Shadowdark stat. And occasionally I might have to adjust something like a spell effect or some out of combat ability. But for the most part, you just run it straight up. The players roll to attack. I use AC 13 in both systems. So what if in Shadowdark it is AC 14? That's fine, I don't care. It's a 5% difference. That's not going to affect the fun at the table. The players are never going to notice. I'm never going to notice. And then the attacks happen. It's okay, it's 2d4 or 1d4 instead of 1d6. Okay, fair enough. There's no difference. No meaningful difference. So again, you guys should do this yourselves. Make your own Shadowdark book. Make your own monster manual of choice. Take all the monsters you want from every book. In my monster manual, I have monsters from Into the Weird and Wild because the process is the same. The process is exactly the same to transfer anything to Shadowdark from Into the Weird and Wild, or from the Monster Overhaul, which I have some monsters in here from the Monster Overhaul. And then I have tons of monsters from Shadowdark and from Unnatural Selection and from Letters from the Dark, because those are all just Shadowdark stat blocks already, and I just copy them over. So it's very easy to create a cool monster manual. This one I have divided up into different categories. So I have animals, and then I have, let's see, once you go through the animals, some of these are great. I love these a lot. The Owlbat, I love the Owlbat. Then you have, let's see, Beings of Heaven and Hell, Magical Creations. Then I have Magical Creatures. So magical creations are like oozes and constructs and things like that. And then I have the magical creatures, and then I have fey creatures, and then I have undead, and then I have mortal common folk and mortal uncommon folk, and a whole bunch of things like that. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful, guys, because honestly, it's so easy. It's kind of me pointing out what hopefully you already know, which is that these are very easy to transfer over. It's not that hard. You just take the one stat block, you compare it to the other, and you realize, oh, these are really actually quite similar. It's not even that hard. And it's not even that hard to do for things like 5th edition. Yeah, things are going to be higher, but not even that much higher. If you look at the Owlbear, for example, from 5th edition, it's really close to the Owlbear from these two books. It's a little bit stronger. Now, there are certain editions where that's not true, right? Things like 4th edition, there are some significant power shifts and curves. 4th edition is a little harder to convert from one to the other. Not as hard as it sounds, but a little bit harder. But basically any other game, 3rd edition, 2nd edition, 1st edition, OD&D, any of the variations, the retro clones, the para-clones, as they're calling them, anything. It's not that hard to transfer them. System is just so not important. Almost anything is system neutral because you can easily adapt monsters, which is the main thing you need to adapt from one system to another. Because most of the time, they don't need to be adapted. They're already laid out for you in the stats that are necessary. So anyway, guys, I hope this has been helpful. I'll put links below to where you can get, obviously, the guide to Shadowdark monster statistics, and obviously the Dolmenwood book and the Shadowdark book are up to you to get. But the guide to Shadowdark monster statistics is a great little document, and I highly recommend you guys check it out. It also has more than that, by the way. It has measuring stick monsters, stat modifiers, and then it has beast categories and optional variants, which basically help you boost on the fly individual creatures. All right, guys, well, that'll do it. Hope this has been interesting, and I'll see you all in another one.